Ja, vielleicht warten wir 5 Minuten. Wir warten noch eine Person. Ja, jetzt haben wir ungefähr 18, 19 Personen. Wir müssen 24 sein, also wir warten 5 Minuten. Und ja, ich habe verstanden. Der erste Flight 2 Sätze. Da ist noch 3 Weißbücher. Dann 2 Schweizer, dann 3. Oder 2 Grauburgunder, dann 3 Spätburgunder und dann 2 Weine, also 4 Weine mit
So, gut. Я уже точно буду.
Нет, но мне не кажется, какая-то ошибка, потому что чуть ли не корректный язык после прерва, Штайкенберг, это
So. Gut. So, Tatjana, du gibst den Startschuss, oder? Tatjana? Okay. Okay, also, willst du vielleicht kurz ein paar Begrüßungsworte sagen, ein bisschen vorstellen und was sagen? Oder so?
Könntest du bitte Englisch reden?
Okay, would you like to start, do some welcome or some introduction or something, or to just start? Tatjana, okay. Good. Then I start. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Romana Echensberger. I'm a Master of Wine. And normally I would be next to you in St. Petersburg. Unfortunately, I had to leave a little bit earlier because it's one of the few things that are because of Corona, whatever bullshit. So I had to leave. Unfortunately, yesterday, which is a real pity. I would have loved to meet you and would love to see the city of St. Petersburg. Anyway, we have a great tasting in front of you, and I'm happy to talk to you and give you some ideas about the new trends and regions in Germany, maybe also some new ideas about the new wine law. I think this is a subject of discussion. Many people asked me what is about the new wine law. So yeah, I hope we can get into a dialogue, even if it's in this online format, and Tatjana will help and bring the questions forward. Okay, you have already 2 sparkling wines in the glasses. So good morning, St. Petersburg. And this is actually one of the first trends that we have in Germany. This is the trend for sparkling wine. And I want to explain you a little bit why this is such a big thing in Germany. Maybe you have wondered why there are so many German names in the Champagne region. You know, in Champagne, you have Deutz, you have Röderer, Teitinger, Bollinger, Krug, all these kind of German names. And this was due that in the beginning of the 19th century, the sparkling wine production was industrialized. Beforehand, it was a product of a coincidence. First of all, Mr. Louis Pasteur had to find yeast cells, and then Madame Veuve Clicquot has to work with someone who produced a glace anglaire, a glass that is thick enough to keep the CO2 pressure, and so on and so on. So a lot of developments took place in the beginning of the 19th century. And this was the time when a lot of German people invested in the champagne industry, started their own business. You can say it was, some of the first ideas of globalization. And because of that, a lot of knowledge, because of the German-French connection, a lot of knowledge came back to Germany. The first sect house in Germany was founded in 1826 from Georg Kessler in Württemberg. And Georg Kessler was the former cellar master at Madame Veuve Clicquot's house. So he learned everything in the Champagne, came to Germany and brought back the ideas of sparkling wine production. And sect was an immediate success. People loved to drink it. One of the hotspots of sect production was, of course, Berlin. Berlin was always a kind of Babylon where all these, actors and actresses and music and sex, drugs and rock and roll took place. And sparkling wine was the drink of those people. And of course, it was very posh and so on. People loved to drink it. When in 1902, the sect tax was raised to finance the Navy, the Germans already drank 11 million bottles per year. And today it's almost 5 bottles per year per capita. So counted for every person in Germany, even the kids. So we are drinking a lot of sparkling wine. And yeah, for a long time, sparkling wine, the image was totally driven or occupied by these big companies. I know that in Russia it's also Henkel Trocken very popular, or Rotkäppchen sect, this sparkling wine from Eastern Germany. And this is okay, these products are nice and easy to drink. However, the base wines for these sparkling wines don't even come from Germany. So this is another story. What we observe in the last 10 years is a huge ingress in quality for wine growers' sparkling wine. We see even wine growers that focus on sparkling wine production only, and this is fantastic because they can really look after all the subtleties in sparkling wine production. And we are lucky ones because we have so much Riesling. And Riesling is fantastically suited for the sparkling wine production. Riesling has almost the same properties as Chardonnay in Champagne. You know, when you do a second ferment sparkling wine, it is important that the base wine does not exceed 11% alcohol. So you have to pick very early. And not every grape variety has, like Riesling or Chardonnay, at this early stage of picking already such a ripe acidity. So the balance between malic and tartaric acidity is key for a good sparkling wine. And they say in Champagne for Chardonnay, 55 tartaric to 45 malic acidity. And the same is for Riesling. And therefore, we are really happy to work with Riesling, and there's great potential for sparkling Riesling. Yeah, still a few things to learn for when you want to make good sparkling Riesling. You have to look after the petrol notes, so you should not squeeze out the grapes until the end. You have to do a very gentle pressing, hand harvesting, and so on and so on. And we see very different styles of Riesling sparkling. I would divide the styles between 3. the first style, I would call it Riesling Darling. This is where the fruit aromas of Riesling are upfront, and it's a bit of a frothy mousse and a little bit of dosage, and it's this kind of, you know, juicy, fruity, not too dry style of sparkling wine, which costs, let's say, 12 euros retail price in Germany, and would compete with very good Proseccos, for example. And then we have the least champion. You can make that also with a Riesling, that the wine is sort of a canvas where the autolytic aromas can show. And therefore you will do the fermentation of the base wines on higher temperature. You would do maybe some malolactic fermentation to get rid of primary fruit. And then you can do a long lees aging for 4 or 5 years. And then you see really this biscuity, toasty flavors of yeast that makes also a wine, a sparkling wine, so appealing. And then we have also bubbly terroir, so very vineyard taste, where it shows really soil character. Also, this kind of sparkling is available in Germany. And I'm very happy what you have already in the Russian market. I was quite surprised how much good sparklings you have already in the market. When I was looking in Canada, it was almost impossible to get a really good sparkling from Germany. And I would really strongly recommend that you look after some sparklings. They have very good price-value ratio. Yeah, now we have 2 wines to taste. I hope you have it already in the glass. We have the Riesling Brut from Reichsrat von Buhl. This winery has a strong impact on the revival of high-quality sparkling wine in Germany, because the former cellar master, Mathieu Kaufmann, was the former cellar master of Boulanger in Champagne. And when he arrived in Germany, which was around 2010, he brought a lot of knowledge to the German wine regions about sparkling wine. And a lot of people made an internship there and asked him and so on, because so far the knowledge about sparkling wine production was very small. You know, you have in Geisenheim University, when they study enology, the sparkling wine production is only a small piece of education, and they don't really touch the subtleties, you know, how much nitrogen supply during first fermentation, during second fermentation, all this kind of stuff. And Mathieu Kaufmann knew all that, and he brought a lot of knowledge to Germany. We are very happy about it. And the second one is a Pinot Noir. It would be a terroir-driven sparkling wine from a premium single vineyard, Assmannshäuser Hellenberg. It's a Blanc de Noir sect from Kloster Eberbach, one of these really high-class wineries in Germany, known since centuries, a very fantastic winery. I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Name of the Rose with Sean Connery. It was broadcasted in Kloster Eberbach. And I just stopped my presentation. I hope I can see you a little bit. Did you taste those 2 wines? Yeah, Tatjana, can you ask a little bit in the round? What do you think about the Riesling Brut? Okay. Any ideas? Do you like it? It's very fresh and squeezy. And I think the Pinot Noir is a bit more earthy, more full-bodied, more vineyard taste, more powerful. And I hope you can feel a little bit the differences, how the different grape varieties show in a sparkling wine. And yeah, I think this Reichsrat von Buhl is known for really high acidity and really refreshing style. And yeah, any comments on those 2 wines? I have only a lemonade here. It's actually water kefir. So I'm a bit jealous that you can taste all these fantastic wines. Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Tatjana, can you repeat?
That is not like a lecture, but just here I am. Hello.
Do you hear me?
Hi.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, the first wine from home group, that is very classic one and really simply to confuse, for example, with the France, I would say. Maybe that's because of the Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
And the second one is
So very lazy character. Isn't it a very lazy character? Very lazy, so very autolytic. Biscuit and brioche and stuff. Okay, yeah.
very classic style. I would never say that is that actually the blind tasting, because I just like to combine. But the second one is simply a Riesling, but in the sparkling version. That's in the blind.
Okay.
Simply Riesling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also.
So you have some.
That also was a.
You have some sparkling in your restaurant from Germany. Yes.
Sometimes we have wine list which changes really often. And therefore, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It changes.
Okay.
The late harvest here, this amount of the late harvest in the second Riesling from Klosterbach, from that's just a Riesling but sparkling.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, yeah, that's how it is. It's like that. You have almost like a wine with bubbles. Yeah, that's quite the thing. So it was just the first introduction. We thought it's nice to start with a sparkling wine to freshen your palate, and maybe you had a little lunch before, so it's you clean your mouth like this. So I would like that you empty your glasses, and Tatiana, can you pour the next two wines already? Tatiana, can you hear me? Okay, and anyone here? Tatiana? Tatiana, can you pour the next two wines? Okay. Tatiana is on his way. Yeah, Tatiana is pouring. Perfect, then we continue. Yeah, I would like to, because you have to be prepared, or you should be prepared, or you want to be prepared for the Riesling Weeks that are coming up. And I also should talk a little bit about the regions and the style differences. And therefore, it is very important to explain you, the background information of all these 13 wine growing regions. I want to give you an overview that you understand why German wine is all about diversity. Everyone is talking always about the German wine law, and this is so terrible, difficult. But you have to consider that we have a huge diversity in soil types and microclimates and regions. And we are working with Riesling. Riesling, it's not like Chardonnay in Burgundy. When you have Chardonnay, it's always a dry wine. And you can make this Burgundian pyramid as classification, generic, village, premier cru, grand cru. That works fantastically. But with Riesling, it's much more difficult to make a classification, because Riesling has so many different phases, and Riesling is the most important grape variety in Germany. But also other grape varieties are on the rise. And I want to explain you a little bit where and what and why and what is the terroir in Germany. It helps to look at the map. So when I studied also for the Master of Wine and so on, I always studied with maps, because when you look at it and you look at the topography or other influences like river or ocean or some mountain ranges, you can deduct from it already a lot of information. For example, when you study Spain, you see, okay, which areas are next to the ocean, there is white wine growing, and behind the mountain is red wine growing. So it's very sometimes more easier to remember all those things when you look at the map. When you look at the German map, you see 13 wine growing regions. 2 of them are like satellites in the eastern part of Germany, Sachsen and Saale-Unstrut. We are very happy that we could serve now today in this next flight a wine from Saale-Unstrut, because it's a very small wine growing region. It's not even, I think, 600 hectares and a very strong domestic market. However, in Saale-Unstrut is Weißburgunder, Pinot Blanc, one of the signature varieties, and I think it's it's really one of the best Pinot Blancs we have in Germany, and I'm happy that we could get one for you to taste today. So these are the two satellites in the eastern part, but when you look in the western part, you see that 11 of 13 wine growing regions are located in the southwest of Germany, and they are all linked in one way or another to the Rhine River Valley. You know, the River Rhine is really very important for the German soul and for the German culture, and also, also for wine growing. You see that the River Rhine, it has its origin in Switzerland, and it flows through the Lake Constance, and then from Basel, the city of Basel in Switzerland onwards, it goes northwards, and then it continues until it will end somewhere then in the North Sea. And also the other rivers where wine growing takes place are tributaries to the Rhine River. You know that the Mosel River ends up in the Rhine. The Ahr River ends up in the Rhine. The Nahe ends up in the Rhine. The Main, where Franken is located, flows into the Rhine. The Neckar, where all the Württemberg wine growing takes place, ends up in the Rhine. So for you, it's important to understand that 11 out of 13 wine growing regions are linked to the Rhine River Valley, and this has a huge impact, and I want to tell you why. So when it comes to the different soil types in Germany, you have to understand that all these different soil types have developed over millions of years. So there was a time when the area where today Germany is located was an ocean, and limestone has developed. Then it felt dry, and it was a desert, and then sandstone was developed. And then it was whatever, and some other soil type has developed. And all this has piled up in layers. You know, like when you make a cake, when you make biscuit, and you make some cream, and another biscuit, and some cherries, maybe something. It's like baking a cake in different layers. And then around 30 million years ago, there were huge tectonic movements. The African plate was pushing the European plate, and the Alps were upfalling. By the way, 4 weeks ago, I was in Alto Adige in Südtirol in Italy. It's just over the mountains, the south side of the Alp mountains. And this is the tectonic, it's the African plate. So Alto Adige is already, so to speak, in Africa, if you look at the Earth historical perspective on that. So the African plate pushed the European plate, the Alps were upfalling, and the riverbed of the Rhine broke down by 2 kilometers. And this was when all these different soil types popped up to surface. So otherwise they would not come to surface. So they popped up to surface. And then, of course, with erosion and stuff like that, they mingled, and then there was some volcanic eruption and blah, blah, blah. So you see all these different soil types in the Rhine River Valley, and therefore so many different types of wines and Riesling styles. And another thing is very important. You see on the right-hand side this map where you see not only the rivers, you see also where the mountain ranges are. You know, you see small mountain range. For example, the Pfälzerwald, the Pfalz forest, which is located here. I hope you can see my cursor. This is where the region Pfalz is here. So you have the Pfalz, and look at the shape of the Pfalz forest. It has almost the same look as Côte d'Or in Burgundy, you know, the southeast facing slope. And then you have the plains, and you know, and the best part of the vineyards are sitting mid-slope. And you have here in the south of the Pfalz forest, the Vosges. Vosges is where in the rain shadow of the Vosges is the Elsass. This is here. Then you have Baden on the other side of the Rhine, and here you have the Black Forest. And you have to consider this mountain ranges when they are in the west. They're protecting from too much rain because of the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf Stream. The bad weather always comes from western direction. And when you have a mountain range, the weather and the wet wetness is blocked, so perfect for wine growing. And when you have on the eastern side of the mountain range, it's protected from too much continental influence. So just look at the map and you understand why the Rhine River Valley is so good for wine growing, because all these factors give a very special microclimate. Otherwise, wine growing would not be possible. So I'm in Munich. There we can brew a beer, but wine growing is not possible. It's just too cold for it. It's because of the other factors. Yeah, this map is also very interesting because it explains where all the slate is. You know, when it comes to German wines, everybody's like slate, and slate is so important, blah, blah, blah. And here you see the map of all the different soil types. You see here in the middle is the Rhine with a lot of alluvial soils. The green spots like here or here are volcanic soils. Here where the green spot is like a pimple when you're like a teenager and you have a pimple somewhere. This is actually the Kaiserstuhl. This is a volcanic eruption and home of fantastic Pinot Noirs here in the Baden region. But look, here is Frankfurt, and then the Rhine flows here. And then in the end of the Rheingau, then all the slate starts. You know, the slate, it's like a big plate of slate. It's all over here. And this is where the end of the Rheingau, parts of the Nahe region, the Mittelrhein, the Mosel, and the Ahr River is located on this kind of slate plateau. So this is where all the slate is. So the rest is all sandstone, limestone, marl, whatever, sandstone, da, 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 da. So all the different soil types. But slate you find more here in the northern part of the wine growing regions. Yeah, what about the climate? Yeah, we are still a cool climate, even though the temperature have risen since the last, let's say, 50 years. It's always funny when you read textbooks on German wines. A lot of textbooks today, they have copied textbooks from the 80s, and the textbook from the 80s copied textbooks from the 50s. And it's really funny that you sometimes you see some actual literature on Germany and we see weather data that you think, oh my God, that was maybe in the 50s. For example, when you look at the Pfalz weather data, in the 50s, the average air temperature was maybe 10.8. And nowadays we are far over 12 degrees. So it's a rise of 1.5 degrees average temperature all over Germany. And so far we profited from climate change, and it would be fantastic if climate change would stop now. Unfortunately, we don't have an influence on that. However, we still are a continental climate. That means we have strong seasons. And this means a drop of temperature in autumn and in the last part of the growing season. And this is very, very helpful for grape varieties like Riesling, because the cool and fresh temperatures in the last part of the growing season ensure fresh acidity and fresh fruit character. Otherwise, the style of the wine would be totally different. So this is part of the game when it comes to Germany. You know, the German signature, the signature thing of German wines is that we have a lot of structure and freshness, but the wines have no weight. It's not like a fat Chardonnay, like so fat where you get tired of drinking. No, they are fresh, they have structure, they have texture, but they are still not too heavy. And this has to do also with this cool and continental climate. Yeah, we have rainfall during the growing season. This is a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to plant protection, because then, yeah, you have to do more plant protection. And, you know, soil orientation, slope orientation is very important. It makes a huge difference if your vineyard is facing west, then you get more prevailing winds, and then it's cooler. Then when it's south facing or east facing, when you have the morning sun but not the evening sun, for example. All these things are important, especially, for example, when you're in the Mosel region, where it's really far in the north and it's cool over there. Yeah, before we start tasting the next wines, a short overview of the white grape varieties. Also here, to give you a picture of what is trend. you see on top is Riesling. We are the biggest Riesling producers in the world. Almost 1/4 of the German vineyard is occupied from Riesling. However, the Riesling vineyards, you look at this, is relatively stable. It will not rise anymore. I think the market is saturated with Riesling. It's fine, and we are very happy with it. It will not grow further. What has gained a lot of interest are Grauburgunder and Weißburgunder, so Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc. You see, it's really a huge ingress on the expense of Müller-Thurgau, Silvaner, and all the other varieties. So Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc are absolutely popular in Germany, and I will explain you in a minute why it is like that. What has also gained attraction is Chardonnay, also for the sparkling wine production. And people also like to experiment with oak-aged Chardonnay and want to compete with Burgundy and with other great Chardonnays in the world. But for sure, Chardonnay plays also a role in the sparkling wine production. And another thing is Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is perfectly suited for climate change. It can grow even in vineyard sites that are already too warm for Riesling. So also here, Sauvignon Blanc gained a lot of attraction, and also people like to drink Sauvignon Blanc, so because of the super aromatic styles. Yeah, why is the trend of Pinot varieties, especially the white ones? It's because when you think about, when you compare Weißburgunder, Grauburgunder with Riesling, for example, then they have less acidity, and not every wine consumer likes the fresh acidity of Riesling, and not every wine consumer loves the intense aromatic profile. I don't know how it's in the Russian market, but in Germany, I'm from Munich, and in Munich are maybe not the most engaged wine drinkers because here it's a beer city. But when they drink wine, they love, for example, Lugana. And I am in the meantime convinced they like Lugana because it almost tastes of nothing. I'm a bit hard now, you know what I mean? Because Lugana is very, restrained in fruit, not much aromatics, soft acidity, light body, and so on and so on. So, and we produce Pinot Blanc and Pinot Gris in very different quality levels. We produce this kind of easy drinking, quaffable styles that compete with Lugana, that you can buy in Rheinhessen for retail price €5, for example. But we make also great terroir-driven wines out of these great varieties. So you can find everything in Germany, from simple ones up to really complex, age-worthy ones. And this is also something that I think it's very interesting with these two varieties. The first wines we want to talk about is the Pinot Blanc, the Weißburgunder. We are the biggest producer worldwide. By the way, Pinot Blanc is also fantastically suited for sparkling wine production. Here we are again, also very popular. And when you look at all the different characters for grape varieties for sparkling wine production, where do you find Pinot Blanc else in the sparkling wine world? It's Franciacorta. In Franciacorta, you have Chardonnay and Pinot Noir like in Champagne, but you don't have Pinot Meunier. Pinot Meunier in Champagne is like the grape variety which gives you immediate fruit and immediate approachables. And this kind of role has Pinot Blanc in Franciacorta. So when you have a sparkling wine from Pinot Blanc, it's always floral, it's frothy, it's open, it's immediately accessible. And it's maybe not the sparkling wine intended for long aging, or for that you, after disgorgement, like a Chardonnay, a sparkling after disgorgement, you can keep it for 10 years and it becomes more complex. So Pinot Blanc is more for the immediate fruitiness. Yeah, Pinot Blanc is a mutation from Pinot Gris. It needs warm sides. It's relatively neutral, floral aromatics. It has good structure, and it can express terroir beautifully. And with its lesser acidity than Riesling, is very popular among in the German market. And you have very different wine styles, from easy drinking to oak-aged ones, from terroir-driven ones to very simple ones. Everything is possible. Yeah, we drank the first two wines. I hope you have it already in the glass. We have the Weißburgunder from Prinz Salm from the Nahe region, vintage 2019. And we have the famous Saale Unstrut von Weingut Böhme und Töchter from Saale Unstrut. And now I'm curious, I stop the presentation for a moment that I can see you, hopefully. And I would like to hear your opinion on that. Okay. Haha, yes, thank you. How is your name? Can you say it again? How is your name? Hi. Thank you.
Okay. For all these community issues, I was in the bottom at your lectures, and I'm very glad to see you now through Zoom, at least. Okay, well,
Yeah.
Okay, about these wines, what is? I think that the first one is really fresh, a bit more structured, a little bit more restrained in fruits. It is quite neutral, which is it became warmer and warmer and have some maybe blossoms, some apples like this. And the second one is more like open-minded and more straightforward with some exotic fruits, overripe apples, some pears, maybe melon and banana. Yeah, it seems like. Yes, and also my colleagues mentioned that vanilla notes, maybe like sweet spice, like sweetness, that is more straightforward with this ripened aromas and even exotic fruits.
So the Saale Unstrut is more powerful, isn't it? Or is it like that? The Saale Unstrut,
Yes.
it's more the Saale Unstrut is most probably more interesting, isn't it? So more complex.
Yes.
The Saale Unstrut. Yeah.
It's a little bit humble, like a little bit restrained. But this one from Naya has more, maybe a touch of mineral notes, like a cherry. Yes, and the Saale Unstrut is more complex and yes, more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, Saale Unstrut, they want to have now the Pinot Blanc as signature variety. So because, so the eastern part of Germany was long under communistic rule. And after the Second World War, all the vineyards had huge problems with phylloxera because, you have to consider phylloxera came in 1870s to Germany and it didn't spread within 1 year. So it was a steady ongoing process. And during the Second World War, the people had other problems than look after phylloxera. And then when they want to rebuild the wine industry, they were under communistic era, and it was not so easy to get into planting material. They could not call a nursery, please send me 2,000 vines, Riesling grafted on whatever rootstock. So then they had this kind of super mix of grape variety, whatever they could get, Müller-Thurgau and Bacchus and Gold Riesling and whatever. And now they found out that the soil is just a lot of limestone, and the very continental climate on the 51st latitude, the very north, and you have very high very cool nights and warm days. That is particularly great for Weißburgunder because then the Pinot Blanc gets this freshness and its tension, and it's very interesting. Sometimes when I have a simple Weißburgunder from Rheinhessen, it's a bit, it's nice and you can drink it, but it's a bit boring to say. So, but yeah.
Close to water.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have one more Weißburgunder. Maybe, Tatjana, can you pour them next to, maybe you empty one glass, maybe you keep the Saale Unstrut, and we will pour one more wine, which is a wine from the Baden region. The Wasma. Can you pour it?
Yes.
You have already. Okay. So they have the already. Okay, good. And it's a vintage 2013. I hope that's right. That's what I had it on the list, 2013. So and that's yeah, I think that it's another story. You know, it's from the Baden region. It's the warmest growing region in Germany, and Wassmer is known to make profound wine. It's also single vineyard Weißburgunder, Schlossberg. Yeah, a lot of limestone and löss you find in the soils, and it's a bit more spicy. There should be also a little bit of oak aging in this wine. I hope you can also feel that a bit. Yeah.
Oh, I do it as well. I have the wine. Yes, it shows the development in the bottle. was it actually now? Yes, and it shows also the oaked.
Yeah, it's a bit oaked. Yeah. Is the vintage really 2013 or is it a bit younger?
Yes, we have 2013. 13. Yes.
13. Okay, okay, good. Good to know.
It is completely different.
And it's still vivid? Is it still lively?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
And acidity is very high. Quite
It still have this freshness and still vintage is very interesting to feel it in the Pinot Blanc, and Tatiana mentioned that it has a good acidity, a vivid acidity, I would say. It's not very high, but it is fresh and vivid and mouth-watering. Yes, and that is completely different from
in a blind tasting, maybe you can mix it up with Chardonnay, isn't it? In a blind tasting, you could mix it up with Chardonnay.
Yeah, I would Chardonnay. Going through this simple way, I would say that is Chardonnay.
Yeah. I think this is a wonderful flight to show you the diversity of Pinot Blanc.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful flight to show you the diversity of Pinot Blanc, also the different quality levels. You know, Prinz Salm is more on a, medium price, and then Böhme and Saale Unstrut is a bit of a higher price, and Wassmer is, I think, the most expensive in the row. So you can find different, so I mean, the first Prinz Salm would be something by the glass pour, isn't it? Something that you pour by the glass in a bistro.
The first one. Yes, it is. And
the first one.
And that's very surprising that for all of us, we are not very good aware of the Saale Unstrut, which is quite a rare region.
Yeah.
Just check and
Yeah.
check it.
Yeah.
And the last one is just
Yeah.
And the last one is a great example that blood developed perfectly in the bottle and still fresh, still vivid. That's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah, I expected like that. Yes. So good. I expected like that. Perfect. Okay, then we continue. Tatiana, can you pour the next two wines? We have now 2 Pinot Gris, and I continue with my presentation because I wanted to give you a little bit of, more deeper knowledge about the different regions. The first wine we tasted, so the easy drinking Pinot Blanc, came from the Nahe region. Nahe region is also a little precious because Nahe region is known for the highest amount of different soil types. 120 different soil types come here together. And it's also known for great Riesling producers. Maybe you heard about Dönhoff or about Gut Hermannsberg or Emmerich Schönleber or Tim Fröhlich. So they are this kind of shit-hot Riesling growers. And they are, I hope you can see my cursor, they are more here in the upper part of the Nahe region. And the more the Nahe goes towards the River Rhine, it gets warmer, the soil gets fatter, and there you have also a lot of Pinot growing. So Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, but also Pinot Noir. So that's a bit the difference. The Nahe region has itself a lot of different tributaries, so a lot of small rivers end up in the Nahe. The landscape is very rugged and, you know, valleys and steep slopes and so very, very different. And that makes the Nahe region very interesting. So you have, when it comes to Riesling, you have in the Nahe Riesling on slate, Riesling on red soil, Riesling on sandstone, Riesling on porphyr. It's really very interesting. So the Nahe could be, yeah, a masterclass on itself. Yeah, here you see this beautiful landscape, also terraced vineyards here. Quite something typical. Yeah, the famous Saale Unstrut, we want to cheerlead a little bit. This is Schloss Wackerbad, and yeah, here it's the Saale Unstrut. It's a small region, 760 hectares, and Leipzig, the city of Leipzig, is in the neighborhood. And this is a booming city. They have now a fantastic trade fair, and it's a city for university and students. So they have a really huge domestic market. They drink mostly everything by themselves. Anyway, however, it's really interesting to look after, especially after the Pinot Blanc. It seems to be really the signature variety of this region. Yeah, the next wine we want to talk about is Pinot Gris, so Grauburgunder. We are the second largest producer after Italy. Italy is, of course, with the Veneto region and also with Friuli, also quite interesting for Pinot Gris. And it's a mutation from Pinot Noir. And when you compare Pinot Blanc with Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc is a bit perfumed, charming, creamy, floral, pear, citrus flavors. And Pinot Gris is a bit more edgy, more smoky. It has a bit of a tangy finish, and it gets you always this kind of bitter bite in the end. And it's so appetizing. And we have really great terroirs for Pinot Gris. Of course, we also produce this easy drinking Pinot Grigio styles. But when Pinot Gris is growing, for example, in the Baden region, really on volcanic soils, it gets almost a smoky touch. It's like you can call it fumé. Like there's almost like fumé in the throat. It's very interesting to taste it. And yeah. A few words on the Baden region, because one of these two wines we now taste next comes from the Baden region. Yeah, it's the warmest wine growing region in Germany. You know, we have in Europe the climate classification. This is the map of the climate classification. I'm sure you saw it already. It's the European law, the wine law is linked to this climate map. For example, when it comes to acidification or chaptalization. So when you are in Sicily, in the south of Italy, where it's very hot, you are not allowed to chaptalize, but you can acidify, and vice versa to the northern regions. And you see, all of Germany is red. It's the coolest part of Europe. Only Baden is green. It's the next step, or it's a warmer climate than the rest of Germany. And it's also shown by the grape varieties grown in Baden. We have some Riesling growing in the northern part of Baden, but it's small, and Baden is not known for Riesling. You know, what Baden is known for are the Pinot varieties, you know, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, and especially Pinot Noir. It was on Lake Constance, which is a part of the Baden region, where Pinot Noir was first mentioned in Germany. And also in the Breisgau area in Malzerdingen, one of the first mentioning of Pinot Noir. So this area is not only because it's so warm that is for Pinot varieties, it has also long history in Pinot growing. Also, this might be interesting for you to know. Yeah, the Baden region is very difficult to shoehorn as well, because it's 400 kilometers long. So from the northern part, which is bordering to Franken, to Lake Constance, it's 400 kilometers. And of course, in the northern, it's a bit cooler than in the southern part. The hottest part is definitely Iringen. where we taste now the wine. It's one of the hottest vineyards in Germany overall. It's this extinct volcano, this Kaiserstuhl. And by the way, Freiburg is a city in that area, and it has always the award of the warmest city in Germany. So Freiburg is always in every year, or let's say for 8 out of 10 years, it's the hottest city in Germany. And it's just 12 kilometers airline between Iringen and Freiburg. Iringen, where the Kaiserstuhl, where the Grauburgunder is also where we taste now. Yeah, anyway, so we have Baden, a very long region, but you know, they have very different sub-regions. And the sub-region that you should remember is definitely the Kaiserstuhl with this extinct volcano. It's maybe the Breisgau, which is more northernwards, where you have fantastic limestone soil on the foothills of the Black Forest. There you have outstanding Pinot Noirs. Think about Bernhard Huber, maybe you heard about him. Maybe you should learn a bit about Kraichgau, which is here in this area with wineries like Heidlinger or Burg Ravensburg. And maybe in the southern part, the Markgräfler Land, where you have, which bordering with Switzerland, where you have some Gut Edel, but also some great Pinot Noirs. Okay, so these are maybe the sub-regions that you should know. Yeah, we taste now these two wines. We have an easy drinking Grauburgunder from the Pfalz region, from the Weingut Hanewald Schwerz. It's a younger vintage, here vintage 2019. And then we have the Winklerberg. I would like to know if this is a großes Gewächs or is it a erstes Gewächs. That would be interesting. It was not mentioned in the wine list that I got in advance. And it's one of these blue chip wineries in this area. Dr. Heger is very known and he has big holdings in the Kaiserstuhl area. So, yeah, curious.
That's the question from a colleague about an order of degustation, why that was the first layer. Riesling as a act, which was quite aromatic one. And what was the aim of an order of this degustation, of an order of the samples?
What was the idea of it? Yeah, to show the diversity and show what are the trends in Germany, because everyone is talking about Riesling and it's definitely for sure very important. But we also want to open also the market for Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, and Pinot Noir and sparkling wine, which is for sure also quite important for Germany. Or do you don't like to drink it, or do you think the samples are stupid? Or I don't know. Oops. Okay. Okay.
Die Frage war ein bisschen anders. Warum ist diese Ordnung? Am Anfang waren Sekte aus Riesling, die sehr aromatisch sind. Ja. Dann kam Weißburgunder und Spätburgunder. Ja. Und dann Grau, Weiß und dann kommt Spät und am Ende ist wieder Riesling. Die Frage war einfach über die Ordnung.
Alles klar, okay, gut. Also, wir haben we have a sparkling wine as a sort of aperitif. That was the idea, to have it as an aperitif, to freshen up. Then we wanted to show the dry white wines. And then the last wines will be sweet. So I thought it is better to have the sweet wines in the end. That was the thought behind. Because let me check the last flight we have. Let me check. I think, yeah. We have in the last flight we have also sweet wines, when I am correct. That's why we put them in the end. That was the idea. Okay.
I have a question about the second wine.
Ja, genau. We have,
Okay,
yeah,
then
we have to drive.
The producer for me it's a little too aromatic.
about the second Pinot Blanc now from Baden, there is a comment from my colleague that it seems like it has a very aromatic profile, like a Muscat group of varieties. I'm pretty sure I would say that more about smokiness and maybe some gunpowder, but maybe that is because of the hot climate of Baden. I don't know. Can you comment on that? Because
Yeah, I think so.
that, she might confuse it with Muscat. Maybe, yes. What do you think about that?
Okay. Yeah, I mean the Grauburgunder from Hega, it's very aromatic, yeah, and but do you get the smokiness of it? You get the smokiness. Is it also a bit oak aged? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
There is considerable oak aging here. That is for me more about the gunpowder and smokiness, and that is warmer than the pulp.
Yeah.
About the floral notes like fruitiness and like candies. But the wine from Pfalz was the first example was a little bit reductive. Did you mention that? It was a little bit reductive, I mean, the first one from Pfalz, but then it shows this clear varietal character of Pinot Grigio, which is Grauburgunder there. The second one is more aromatic, more warmer, you know, like sweet aromas, and has this smokiness and gunpowder.
Yeah, and I think also the second wine from Baden is more concentrated. It has much less yield levels. As you know, the Pfalz wine is made as an easy drinking style and not too expensive, and the Hega is reduced in yield, so you have more concentration. And the fruitiness, I don't think that Hega puts some percent of Gewürztraminer. I don't believe that. I think it's 100% Pinot Gris. I don't know where the fruitiness comes from. Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. For me, those wines are always very smoky and peachy and powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have one question. Okay, all agree that the first one is fresh and the second one is more complex, but for someone it is maybe a little bit more overripened, as some colleagues mentioned. But
okay,
great examples also. Both styles are different. That's very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah. Also, I think that's a good example. It's a bit difficult to make a wine selection from far away, and then sometimes when you get the wine lists, it's not clear mentioned. Is it a großes Gewächs? Is it erstes Gewächs? Because Iringer Winklerberg, you have erstes Gewächs, and then you have also großes Gewächs, because it's such a huge vineyard and they have different parcels. But anyway, but for me it was important to show you those two styles. You can have the first one by the glass pour. I'm sure that is very nice to drink, easy drinking, and the second one is maybe then a bit for aging and so on and so on. Yeah. So anyway, good. However, let's continue. We have some red wine to taste. I think Tatjana is already pouring the first red wines. I can see her.
Machen wir und dann den dritten.
Okay.
Ja, richtig. Wir machen jetzt Stott und Knipse und dann kommt Salbei.
Das ist richtig.
Okay.
Wunderbar. Gut. So, yeah, let's continue. Yeah, when it comes to German red wine, it's since the last 30 years, there's a huge ingress and the quality of German red wine, especially Spätburgunder Pinot Noir. It was a sort of rediscovery of Pinot Noir. You know, Pinot Noir, the first documented notion of Pinot Noir was in the 9th century. 9. Okay, the first time we mentioned Riesling was 15th century. So Pinot Noir is much longer known in Germany than it is Riesling. And you know that Pinot Noir is a grape variety prone to mutation. We see that also in the New World. In New Zealand, for example, there was some smuggling of some Clos de Vougeot clones in the 1970s. And now, after 40 years or 50 years now in New Zealand, they have their own clonal selection that has adapted to the New Zealand climate and has their own aromatic. When you think about this kind of story, also the heritage clones in California that came to California in the beginning of the 20th century, they have totally adapted to the climate of California and have not so much to do anymore with the origin of Burgundy. And you can imagine, since we grow Pinot Noir since centuries, that we have a very own clonal selection, and which is also now highly regarded. So when there was this kind of pioneering and this onset, we want to make great Pinot Noir again in the 1980s, everyone just wanted to copy France, and they imported a lot of Dijon clones and so on and so on. But this is also fantastic. This gives also great results. But also we looked after our own German collection of clones, and we did better clonal selections to increase the quality of these clones. Because these clones were in the 1950s and 60s, they did some clonal selection, which was done the main purpose to have high yields, big berries, big bunches, and which is a disaster for Pinot Noir, because Pinot Noir is a thin-skinned grape varieties. All aromas and tannins are in the skin. And when you have big berries like this, you have a very bad ratio between skin and juice. So you will have always a diluted wine when you have bunches like this and berries like this. And with this new clonal selection of the German clones, they looked for mixed berried clones, for, more looser bunches, more smaller berries, more intense fruit character. And this is absolutely great to see that. So we have in Germany a huge diversity of clonal selections of Pinot Noir. Dijon clones, German clones, the so-called Geisenheim clones, but also from Freiburg, from the southern part. We have also Mariafeld clones, which are of Swiss origin, which are known to keep the fresh acidity. Also this. And today, the wine growers, when they plant a new vineyard, they can really choose, it's part of their house recipe or their philosophy, what kind of clonal selection they want to have. And they do it with a great sovereignty. I think also what I found interesting, I'm now in the wine business since more than 20 years. And when I started as a sommelier, it was always like that Burgundy was, everything when it comes to Pinot Noir. It was only Burgundy. And today, the wine lovers know that Burgundy is maybe the cradle of Pinot Noir, but it's not the godfather of style. Today, so many great Pinot Noirs are accepted in the wine world and achieve great accolades and acknowledgements. And also the German Pinot Noirs are really now on world stage and can compete with the best ones in the world. Yeah, you see that also in the numbers. Spätburgunder is the second most planted grape variety after Riesling, and it has gained a lot of interest. You see it double since the last 25 years, and even 10 times more when you compare it to the numbers of the 1980s. So we are really proud of Pinot Noir. However, only a side aspect, what is also trend in Germany, a bit the same story as with Riesling. Spätburgunder Pinot Noir is a grape variety, especially for wine lovers. And a normal people who are maybe not so engaged wine drinkers, some of them, when they want to drink red wine, they want to have a dark red wine, dark colored, mouth full of wine, and da-da-da-da. And therefore, the alternative is Dornfelder. And since Dornfelder has a bit of a bad image in the meantime, a lot of wine producers do now a blending. So you see also here in the numbers that Merlot is rising. Also, you know, Cabernet Sauvignon, St. Laurent, for example. And what is, I think, the next big thing are red blends. So where you blend Dornfelder with Merlot and with St. Laurent and so on, and then you have some fancy cuvée name like, you know, Coco Loco and wine growers, digest, blah, 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 and some fancy label. And you sell it maybe for 12 or 15 euros retail price. And this is at the moment very successful done in Germany, just on a side note. But of course, the signature is definitely Pinot Noir. Yeah, and I poured the first two wines that we poured. The first one is from the Ahr Valley. I just go back here. The Ahr Valley is beautiful. It's a slate canyon. It's really funny that the Ahr is more northern than the Mosel, but it's dedicated to red wine growing. And this is because it's a special microclimate. You have, you know, very narrow, and so it's heating up like crazy and so on. And so it's the El Dorado for Pinot Noir. And I think 60% is growing with Pinot Noir, and some more 10% is Pinot Madeleine, which is Frühburgunder, which ripens a little bit earlier than Spätburgunder and gives a very seductive taste. So whenever you have the chance to taste some Frühburgunder, it's also very beautiful, very wild and cherry scented and more licorice-like and round and charming. Yeah, and what also is very stunning, you know, I'm doing for the wine guide of Germany. I do the testing for the Ahr wines. So I do that since 6 years now, and I have a great overview of the Ahr wines. And what I found always so impressive is that you have on this small river, it's only 25 kilometers long, and you see it's only 560 hectares. It's very small. You have a huge diversity of terroirs. So when you come more closer to the Rhine, you have fatter soils. You have also some, not only slate, you have also some löss and some loam, and it's warmer. So when you taste some Spätburgunder from this area, it's really lush and mouthfeeling and cherry and more bold and so on. And when you go away from the Rhine, it's becoming cooler. The valley becomes more width. Also, the harvest time is around 2 weeks later than the area next to the Rhine. And you get this pure slate soil, and you get really smokiness, spiciness, and typical for me for Ahr Spätburgunder is this kind of bacon fat aroma. You know, when you do for breakfast ham and eggs and you have this bacon in the pan, this is for me so typical for Ahr. Yeah, great Pinot producers, really boutique wineries, also quite expensive. The problem is that next to the Ahr region is Bonn and Cologne, the two cities. And there are a lot of rich people, and you know, they buy everything, and so the wines are quite expensive, unfortunately, but it's worthwhile to look at. Yeah, the next region I would like to explain is the Pfalz. I'm sure Pfalz is next to Mosel, Rheingau, and Rheinhessen the most known wine region in Russia when it comes to German wines. And yeah, Pfalz is the biggest player in the Riesling world. It has by acreage the biggest Riesling plantation of any region in the world. Also, and it's a very, very special region. And this is explained by this picture here. I mentioned before that you have the Pfalz forest. You see the mountain range here in the back of the vineyards. They protecting the area from cooling influences and too much rain from the west. And then you see the slopes. And the best parts are mid-slope. Here you find all this shit-top single vineyards, blah, blah, blah. And then when it goes to the Rhine River, you have more alluvial soils. There you get this easy drinking, Dornfelder, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Müller-Thurgau, and so on, whatever you want. So a lot of this, fighting varietals, if you may say so. Yeah, because of the special climate, it's very warm there. They call it also the German Tuscany, because when you go there, you see almond trees and fig trees and also all the vegetable growing. So the areas next to the River Rhine, they call it also the German salad bowl, because it's so good and good climate that all the vegetables growing is there. So it's easy to grow tomatoes and stuff like that. And so, you have this very protected area. It's very dry. So Pfalz is next to the Rhine-Hessen area, those regions where you have a super high ingress in organic and biodynamic wine growing, because it's much easier as, for example, in the Mosel for several reasons. First of all, of the dry climate, so you have less fungal pressure. And the other reason is that the vineyards are not so steep. You can go everywhere by tractor. And that is quite an advantage when you want to do some soil management, when you don't use Roundup. And the Mosel, you have to do it by hand. And the Pfalz, you can go by tractor and do some grass mowing, and then that's it. It's much easier. Yeah, let's taste these two wines. We have a Spätburgunder from the winery Stotten in the Ahr Valley. Stotten is among the top Pinot Noir growers in Germany, by the way, also Knipser and Salvei. So you get now a really great and a really outstanding tasting here for Pinot Noirs. Stotten makes a super elegant Pinot Noir style. It's kind of trend for German Pinot Noirs to get less extracted, also to play around with a bit of reduction, that you get a bit this flintstone and a bit of this, matchstick flavors, really light in color, almost like an infusion, and not this bold, concentrated oak over things. This is over. So this is a kind of trend. I think it's a global trend in the Pinot Noir world to get a lighter style, a lighter in color, lighter in extraction, and so on, and full of layers. The second one is from Knipser. He is next to Stotten, one of the pioneers for German Pinot Noir growing. He is located in the northern part of the Pfalz, where you have a lot of limestone. So Kirschgarten is pure limestone. Also old wines, vintage 2014. So you should have already some aged notes, herbal, forest floor aromas. And then we have Salvei, also from the Kaiserstuhl from Baden, where we had the Pinot Gris. This is also from the Kaiserstuhl. And he makes also a very spicy version of Pinot Noir. So you have really three totally different terroirs. The first is Pinot on slate. The second one is this very elegant, almost Burgundian-like limestone Pinot Noir. And the third one has this boldness, roughness, smokiness of Kaiserstuhl. Yeah, I'm curious about your impressions on that. I think you have only the first two wines, and the third one is coming.
We are waiting for it, but now at the moment I would say that it's not really a fair play to compare this, a basic version from Stotten and this Großgewächs. That is a great difference in levels of the wine, so we are waiting for a Kaiserstuhl. I can't wait for it.
Okay, I think that
the first one is truly going very understandable, elegant style, a little bit reductive course at the beginning. But it seems like it was a little bit more soft, a little weaker than the Knipser version. And the Knipser is very rich, complex, with a lot of you know, this here I am, like with sweet spices integrated with nuts, with the with their overripened fruits, still with a good acidity on the palate. So therefore, it perfectly shows a great potential for aging. That is more, you know, like a straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you say?
All of us are under impression of these wines. All of us still love Pinot Noirs. Yes, we are. Yes, and what I like very much in these wines, both of them, that they very clearly shows this, you know, Spätburgunder from Germany. That clearly goes from in this style.
Yeah.
Exactly what we expect from this wine. But the Stoden is a little bit more elegant, like flinty.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Stoden is.
You have something to say. So for me, the first is more interesting. It's so poor, it's very, very poor, but in this poorness is required a lot of interesting aftertastes. But at first glance, it looks like a right, like in comparison to the second one is very obvious. It's like structure. Why it goes more structured? And second, more rich, more powerful, more fruity. And when Amanda said about the cherry in the regional flats, it's really like this. It was really like cherry in tart.
Can you hear my colleagues or not? Shall I just repeat louder?
No, it's really. I hear only one word or so, but I don't hear. I didn't hear the whole sentence. So you have to say it again. I'm sorry.
Just repeat it louder. That is the same I hear. And yes, the overall, all of us, we think that the first one is more elegant, and the second one more rich. My personal opinion that the first one is more interesting because at the first sight it seems to be poor, but in this poorness, as far as I understand, it shows its beautiness, and therefore there are people, some colleagues, that like the first wine more because the second, from false, it seems for some people that it seems to be more, you know, like obvious, too simple, and therefore the first one is more interesting for someone. But also the second, mentioned that the first one has more structure, more structure, and the second one is more fruity, just like the cherries, like that more. That was that we mentioned that the first one is elegant and the second one is more richness and open-minded, you know, like straightforward here. And now we are going with the Kaiserstuhl. I was there 2 years ago, and therefore
With the Kaiser, but
I do like this region. Very powerful.
But by the way, thank you for the comments. It's really nice that you comment on the wine and that everyone is doing, because otherwise it would be stupid to talk to this laptop and not get an interaction. But I totally agree on that. I think the Knipser is for wine drinkers who are maybe not so deep in the Pinot world, because it ticks all the boxes. You know, the Knipser, you have the cherry fruit, you have the oak. It's this balance between ripeness and acidity that is almost this kind of French, kind of balance and so on. It ticks all the boxes, and the Stotten is really unique. I mean, you have to consider there is not so much Pinot on slate in the world. There's Pinot on slate in Aar. There's Pinot on slate in Graubünden in Switzerland. But in Graubünden in Switzerland, the slate is a bit intermingled with some limestone. And there is Pinot on slate in central Otago. And that's it. I don't know. I think some areas in Oregon have also a bit slate. But, you know, Pinot on slate is really unique. And you can't compare it with a limestone Pinot because it's different. And I think what is an advantage for Stotten is the vintage 2015, because it's a more, let's say a more charming vintage, 14 was a bit of a, more difficult vintage. But anyway, I totally agree. Stotten has these layers. For me, I found it always interesting when I started as a sommelier, I couldn't understand Pinot at the first time. You know, when you start as a wine drinker, you know, it was the time when the super Tuscans came up, and the quality is like, you know, hitting you in the face, you know, boom, like, you know, fat and oak and ripeness, and here we are. And for great Pinots, I had to find, you know, that a great Pinot is not stronger. It shows its quality with more layers, and that's something you have to get the feeling for it. It's for me it was also difficult in the beginning. Anyway, but how about the Salvai? It must be fantastic. It's vintage 13, isn't it? Am I correct? 13 Kirchberg. I'm so jealous. You know, I'm sitting here with my lemonade. We couldn't get the wine, so I'm angry. So, but yeah, I know a bit the wines anyway.
Yes, it is absolutely.
But do you feel also the difference here? Yeah, tell me, what is the difference? The difference. Is it different, the Salva?
Yes, it is. It has a lot of smokiness from the first sight, you know, like that is fantastic as always. I do love this region. I do love this producer very much, and I know the wines very well.
Yeah.
It's very powerful with a lot of smokiness, and like I'm just smelling a Kaiserstuhl there at my glass now.
Yeah. That's really, yeah.
Okay.
And it's for sure also
Some comparison with Pomar.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Like a bit this dryness, this kind of meaty dryness. It's not like a Volnay or like a Vosne Romanée, very gentle. So it's more like, love me or hate me, I don't care. But I like it a lot, and it's this German clones. Salvai, I think, is German clones. You get this upfront red fruit, and also a bit of a herbal touch, like herbs. I found that always in these kind of wines. But of course, but the smokiness is very typical. And when you drink it, it's like iodine, saltiness. So iodine, like sea, like you're on the sea or something. Yeah. And I think, what I found is for German Pinot Noir great that you get good quality of Pinot Noir even at a approachable price level. Because to be honest, when you drink Burgundy, I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's only make fun from 60 euros onwards, to be honest, in Burgundy. But when it comes to Germany and you spend 20 euros, you can get lovely Pinot Noirs, and even some quaffable style, easy drinking for 10 euros. And I think that's remarkable.
They're in Germany. I hope we will go there someday.
Spread the word.
Okay. Shall we go ahead?
Sorry, you have to. We go ahead. Okay, please. Yeah. Please empty the glasses and maybe you swirl it with water, then that we can use it now for the Rieslings. Yeah, because we have also 2 sweet Riesling. That's why I put the Riesling in the end. I hope you are happy with that. Okay. Yes, Riesling Weeks. We have to talk about Riesling, of course. Yeah, Riesling is fantastically suited for the German climate, because it has hardy wood and it's therefore frost resistant. This is still needed in Germany because sometimes in winter we get -15, -20 degrees, and therefore it's important that you have hardy wood. It's late budding. Also, this is an advantage for spring frost regions where we are, and then with climate change, this is even a bigger issue because we have in April already very warm temperatures. So the vines are budding, and then in May comes the frost. So we had in the last years quite some problems with spring frost. Yeah, it's a late ripening period, grape variety, and it needs this long and cool ripening period to incorporate a lot of aromas, of extract, and to keep this fresh acidity. That's why Germany is so fantastically suited for Riesling, because this continental cool climate, it's just the perfect match. It's susceptible to noble rot. Also, this enhances the diversity of Riesling, and its high level of acidity. And all of these factors are then that Riesling is also age-worthy. You know, they always say Riesling is a noble variety. What differentiates a noble variety from a yummy variety? It's definitely age-worthiness. You know, a Lugana, you can't age for 20 years. A Riesling, a good Riesling, forget it in a cellar, no problem. Yeah, with Riesling, it's very, very difficult to shoehorn. And it's, I told you already, we Germans, we always get this criticism towards a German wine law. And now they want to make a new wine law, and it's even, I don't know who should understand that outside of Germany with all this name. Spätlese, Auslese, Trockenbeeren, Auslese, and then also the single vineyard names. So when you're not a German, we could make a competition with the most craziest German vineyard names. Who could spell it best? Like Bad Münster, Samsheimer, Dauten, Pflanzer, something like that. And then with all this, so it's really hard. Anyway, the reason why it will never work that a wine law in Germany is logic has to do with Riesling, because you can't shoehorn Riesling. A Riesling from the Mosel region with 12 grams sugar can taste perfectly dry. A Pfalz Riesling with the same amount of acidity and 6 grams sugar can taste already fruity. So the wine law to say 9 grams per liter sugar is the border for calling it dry is so stupid, because a Mosel Riesling can have even 15 grams and it's still dry. So this is just one example, and there are many other examples. So Riesling can show its qualities at very different yield levels. This is also an advantage for Riesling. So you get Riesling for €5 and it's decent and it shows its typicity and character, and that's fantastic. This is another story with Pinot Noir. With Pinot Noir, you always have to reduce yields to get some quality. With Riesling, and you have 80 hectoliters per hectare, it's still nice to drink, okay? Of course, for Großes Gewächs, you have to reduce the yield, but not to ridiculously low levels as Pinot Noir. Then, of course, noble rot is an issue. Then you make sparkling wine, you make bone dry to every imaginable sweetness level. It's sensitive to soil types, and of course, it's age-worthy. And this is a lovely category. We will taste also one in the next tasting, a fruity one. And that's what I love on Riesling, this kind of in between dry and sweet. So fruity is not sweet. This is kind of category, so Cabinet Feinherb or something, which is so lovely to drink. I love these wines. We always serve it after dinner as a digestive. You know, when we love cooking, even in Corona times. What else can you do as eating and drinking now? We all gained weight like crazy, but anyway. And can you imagine you have a starter and a soup and then a fish dish and then a main course and then you drink a lot of red wine. And then what else should you drink the whole evening? And I can tell you the best thing to do is a Riesling Cabinet. It has 9% alcohol, a little bit of residual sugar. It's fruity, not sweet. It's fresh and lively. And the good thing is, with this low alcohol level, you get sober while drinking. This is just my tip for you. You should try that out. Yeah, concerning soil types. You know, soil types have a huge impact on the taste profile, because, you know, if the soil is of limestone, of slate, of red sandstone, and God knows what, this has a huge impact because it has an impact on how nutrient supply is, how water can drizzle through, if it is a good drainage, less good drainage, and so on and so on. And yeah, we see that also then later in the tasting. Yet effects of the soil difference are mostly indirect. So when it comes, for example, to slate, Slate has less fruit-forward character than Riesling, but more the smoky mineral touch. And it's not like that a slate molecule climb up the vine, sitting in the berries, and then look at you out of the wine glass like this. It's more an indirect effect. So slate is very poor in nutrients and it's very poor in water retention. So the grapes are always a little bit under stress. And when they're under stress, the Riesling grapes, the grapes have also less nutrients in the grapes, and yeast need nutrients to produce fruit aromas. When there are not enough nutrients, the yeast works differently, and it produces maybe more volatile sulfur compounds during fermentation because of the lack of nutrients. And that's why, you know, slate Riesling has this kind of smoky mineral character. These are these kind of indirect effects. Yeah, that's maybe not interesting. So anyway, what kind of regions do we have for Riesling? Yeah, Pfalz we had already for Spätburgunder, but of course Pfalz is also known for great Rieslings. And one of the biggest wine growing region overall is Rheinhessen. It's a vast area. You see that here on the map. And Rheinhessen is very interesting because it has different parts and they are totally different within itself. I'm sure I have it here on the next page. Yeah, you see here the Bereich Wonnegau in the southern part. This is a beautiful landscape, so undulating, a lot of hills like this. And the soil is limestone with some loess on top of it. Here you have the shit-hot Riesling villages Westhofen and Flörsheim-Dalsheim. You know, Flörsheim-Dalsheim is where Klaus-Peter Keller is located. Maybe you heard about the Riesling G-Max. It's the most expensive dry Riesling in Germany or even in the world. It's auctioned Magnum bottle for 4,000 euros or something. And then also Westhofen is very prominent because of Mr. Wittmann and some single vineyard names like Moorstein, Aulerde. And this is a very unique Riesling style, very pristine, clean, fresh, and always kind of this kind of grapefruit bitterness in the finish, like always this kind of bite in the finish. This is very typical for the wines from Westhofen. And yeah, people love it, and I think it's really an outstanding terroir. Then we have in Rheinhessen the Bereich Nierstein, and this is especially interesting between the village Nierstein and Nackenheim. There you have the red slope mountain. The soil is as red as my wallet. You know, the soil type here is like this color, very red, super high in iron. And when you have Riesling on this red soil, like all wines on reddish soils, they have this spiciness. Think about, you know, when it comes to international wine, do you know Coonawarra in Australia? This is the Terra Rossa, where Cabernet Sauvignon is grown. And when you taste the Cabernet Sauvignon from Coonawarra, from the Terra Rossa, it's like that you have eaten some chili. You know, it's very spicy. And also the Riesling here, it's not that it's like fruit, peach, and tutti frutti. It has this more chamomile, herbal touch, and really some spicy notes in the finish. Outstanding terroir, but it's a Riesling not for kids. You know, it's you have to get into that. Sorry. Anyway. Yeah, and then we have some great terroirs for Pinot Noir in Ingelheim. You know, Ingelheim is one of the oldest Pinot Noir villages in Germany because Charlemagne, you know, the Emperor Charlemagne in the 9th century, which was, you know, with the horse through Europe. And at this time, Burgundy belongs to Germany. And Charlemagne brought the Pinot varieties to Germany, first at Lake Constance, then and then it came to Ingelheim and also to Assmannshausen. And in Ingelheim is a very special soil. It's a lot of sandy soil. There's always a little bit of dry stress, and it's perfectly for red wine growing. And there are some new kids on the block, like Mr. Saalwächter or Silke Adams, and they are the new kids on the block for Spätburgunder. So whenever you have the chance, you should taste some good Pinot Noir. It's really great terroir for Pinot Noir. And then we have the Bereich Bingen, which is bordering to the Nahe region, and it's the cooler part of Rheinhessen. Also here, fantastic Riesling growing is taking place. Yeah, what is amazing on Rheinhessen, it's from zero to hero. In the 1970s, it was the vast area for cheap Liebfraumilch production. And today it's one of the most dynamic wine growing regions in Germany. And it can be also an advantage to have not this tradition in your backpack. You know, when you are a winery in the Rheingau, it's always about the tradition and Schloss Johannisberg and Schloss Vollrath and Kloster Eberbach and centuries, blah, blah, blah. And they are just, you know, they came back from their studies at Geisenheim and from their internships around the world, and they could start from scratch because they had no image. They had a bad image, but it's obviously fun because then you can create something new. And they did it. And I think Rheinhessen is really an amazing wine growing region in Germany, really dynamic. Yeah, here's the Rheingau. When it comes to Riesling, of course, the Rheingau, very aristocratic, very nice mix of soil types. You know, you have a bit this quartzite, already a little bit slate you can find, and also löss and marl. And it's a magic of nature, the Rheingau, because you have to think the Taunus is the mountain range. The River Rhine couldn't get through, so it flows like this. And the Taunus, it's south facing. So you have the south-facing slopes directly on the River Rhine on the 50 parallel. So it's on very high altitude. So the sun radiation has even the double effect than if you are on the equator. You know, just to give you, this is the magic of the Rheingau. You have full sun radiation, south-facing slopes, you know, drainage, the cool wind can go down and so on and so on. This is the magic of Rheingau. And yeah, it's the cradle of Riesling growing. Here the first Spätlese was harvested, the first ice wine was made. And what you also have to consider, that Rheingau, all the regions where the Rhine is are also cultural, where they profited also cultural. Because you have to think, when the Romans conquered Germania, when they came over the Alps, then Germany was all forest and some half-naked Germans were running through the forest. And so the Romans went northwards on the Rhine, and they brought all the grape varieties with it. And also the River Rhine gave the possibility for trade, because at that time there was no steam locomotives or something. The only way where you can sell your wine was put the barrels on a boat and ship it to the Netherlands or to Great Britain and so on. And so the Rheingau area was always very beneficial and rich, because they could trade with other regions with their wine. In Franken, they were always poor because they couldn't, you know, sell the wines anyway. Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's taste this first two wines we have in the glass. Let me check, what do we have? Okay, let me check, what do we have here? I think we have Deidesheim Riesling and Kietricher Gräfenberg Trocken. So, yeah, Deidesheim Riesling is sandstone from Winning. By the way, it's very typical Riesling, what you expect from a Riesling. It's textbook Riesling when it comes from sandstone. Peach, floral, citrus, typical Pfalz, a little bit meat on the bones. I think Pfalz Riesling is something you could offer someone who has not yet drunk Riesling, and it's immediately approachable. And Rheingau Gräfenberg is very elegant. Yeah, anyway, let me know what you think.
I think that both shows this stylistic characters of the region. So the Pfalz with proteins, with more easygoing like this Riesling, and the second one more structured.
Yeah.
Like that. But I'd like my colleagues maybe to comment or review? So, okay, still all of us we can agree on that this is a clear variety character. Both are absolutely Rieslings for 100 persons. Really good sample blind tasting, and we're all lucky. Yes. Both shows this, benzoic touch, but not this a lot of, but just a touch. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And the second one has been mentioned that it has this, chalky mineral character. Yes.
Yeah, like this.
Very serious character.
Serious, yeah. Serious. It's like aristocratic, a bit like this. So yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the Pfalz, what I found interesting, the Pfalz region is super hedonistic. That I'm located in Bavaria, Bavaria from Munich, where the Oktoberfest, like this, and we are all Catholic, and the Catholics are really funny because they can make sins, and then they go say, "I'm sorry, I made a sin," and okay, good, just done. Anyway, go on, no problem. And this kind of attitude, and Pfalz belong to Bavaria, and also, because of the very fantastic climate, that they love life. They eat a lot of meat, they eat good food, and they make parties and so on. And when you come to the Rheingau, you have the old money, all these castles, and all this kind of people who have this Roman numbers after the name. Kind of whatever. This is another story, and this is a totally different attitude, and you feel it in the wine, isn't it? The Rheingau is like this, and the Pfalz is lush, and yeah, let's go, and that's I love Pfalz, yeah. Yeah, good two examples.
Do you like beer? Do you drink and like beer? Do you? Just a side question.
Sorry.
Do you like beer?
Sorry, you have to repeat.
Drink beer? Do you like it?
Yeah, of course I like beer. Yes, I like beer. So yeah, sometimes it's nice to drink a beer, even when it's so hot. It's so hot outside, and then in the evening or after wine tasting, I think for everyone of us does it. Huh? We're all in the wine business, and we have a trade fair. Yeah, fantastic.
Usually for sommeliers, like a tradition to drink some beer after some Riesling, to drink some beer just to wash out all that stuff with an acidity.
Wash out, yes. To neutralize the acidity. Yeah, we can offer everything in Germany. We can offer Riesling, and we can, it's a perfect business model in a way. Okay, any comments on these two wines? No? Yeah. Good. Okay, then we continue with the last part of the presentation, and we have two nice off-dry and a noble sweet wine. Yeah, but first a few words on the Mosel region, because the off-dry one comes from the Mosel region, and I'm sure you saw pictures of the Mosel. I mean, when you see the advertising material from the wines of Germany, you have always a picture of a steep slope Mosel vineyard or this kind of picture, because it's a very wild, romantic landscape. It's very beautiful, the Mosel. Yeah, the Mosel has different parts. Let's say that the biggest volume comes out of the mid part of the Mosel, the Bereich Bergenkastel. Here 2/3 of the whole production is produced. We have small side regions in the Mosel. It's the Saar and the Ruwer. The one we taste from Van Volksem is now from the Saar Valley. And in previous times, it said always Mosel, Saar, Ruwer. Now everything is under the name Mosel. I found it a bit a pity, because the Saar region and the Ruwer region are, in my opinion, very different towards the Mosel. And this has also to do with the terroir. The Mosel is, first of all, a real river. It's really some water in the river, and it thereof has some impact on the microclimate. The Saar is like this, and the Ruhr is like this. It's just a super. I mean, the Ruhr is so small, it doesn't have any impact on the microclimate. And another thing is that on the Mosel, the vineyards are located directly next to the Mosel. So they're always facing towards the water. The Saar goes from south to north, and the topography is like that you can't put the vineyards next to the Saar, because then they would be north facing. Of course, it's not possible. So the vineyards on the Saar are not next to the river, they are in the west side valleys. And if it's open to the west, you get cooling winds coming in, okay? So therefore the Saar, the character of Saar wines is totally different. When you have Mosel, it's always a bit baroque and a more lush and a more round, like this. And Saar is like when you bite in a red-cheeked apple. So really and a crunchy apple, you know, what we like to do, and then the juice is running and so on like this. This is for me Saar. This is a totally different terroir. And the Ruhr is the coolest part of the Mosel. It's really cool, and those wines are stunning. They are really steely with grip and very cool, minty, almost eucalyptus-like fresh. And I think that's also a fantastic style. So yeah, so huge diversity on the Mosel. Yeah, Mosel, it's definitely one of the coolest climates in Germany. It's the steep slopes covered with slate. You find a lot of ungrafted wines still there. The people love it because the phylloxera doesn't like slate. And yeah, it has a long a period between flowering and harvest. You do also picking dates, not even at once, because you pick for the different Prädikate, Kabinett, Spätlese, and so on and so on. You start with Kabinett, and then 2 weeks later Spätlese, and then a little later Auslese, and then later the Beerenauslese, and you hope for frost when you want to make ice wine. So yeah, this is a bit the story of Mosel. It's like that the Mosel makes more and more dry wines. So when you look at the plain numbers, more than half is produced in a dry style. However, the Mosel internationally is known for this off-dry styles, which is very unique. I think there is no other wine style in the world where you have at that low alcohol this kind of aromatics, this crazy complexity in aromatics and age-worthiness. I think that's something very unique in the Mosel region. And it's also a marker when you get it in a blind tasting Mosel wine, you should always, get it. Yeah, these are the 2 wines that we taste now. Okay, I will put it off. The Weingut von Volksem, Riesling off-dry, and then one from Rheinhessen, from the Red Slope Hill that I mentioned, that with the red soil almost as red as this, and as an Auslese. Yeah, I'm curious what you say. Sorry, my nose is running. Okay.
Because I'm really subjective here. That is my beloved style of Riesling, of all types of Rieslings. I do love dry wines, and Auslese is like, you know, like from fairy tale, like elves vinified these wines. And therefore I'd like to my colleagues to comment.
Yes.
Very subjective. I just have no words. They're perfect. Both the Mosel version is the clear Mosel style, which is off dry, and this wine from Rheinhessen that is not specifically Rheinhessen, that is more Auslese, like, you know, like a song for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But von Volksem is really typical Mosel.
Yes, we have a comment. I will repeat it a little louder just in a second.
Yeah.
богаче. По крайней мере, когда я его открывала, когда я его пробовала, когда я его снимала, он был более бензольный, более абрикосовый, он был яркий, классический, можно встретить. Сейчас это какая-то немножко вредная тень, это вот тот же самый, который я покажу. Нет, просто когда я его помню, когда я его открывала год назад, буквально, он был не ярче. Возможно, я сейчас понимаю, я не говорю, потому что а второй, конечно, прекрасен. Собственно, я сторонник аплодисментов. Сейчас второе движение в этом плане. Там есть и артишоки, там есть и сладость, там есть и соленье, но это вегетарная штука, которую можно в любой момент, в любое время.
We have a command that one of my colleagues, which is a sommelier on the floor, she worked with the Van Volksem for several years, as I understood, and she just commented that it was a little bit there. It's a little bit deeper from those versions she worked with. So it was more rich and complex than now, as far as I understood. Now it's a little bit more subtle than it was. Maybe that's because
Okay.
of the vintage. I'm not really sure.
The vintage, yeah. Vintage 15, isn't it 15? Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, and Van Volksem is super cool. Did you see the new winery from Van Volksem? The new winery? Yeah, oh, it's amazing. He made a big architectural super work. I mean, he is very good looking. He's very rich and he makes good wines, but he's unfortunately married. But anyway, nobody's perfect. But he has, the new winery is crazy and he makes very good wines. Yeah, but I think it's a very typical wine. And also the Rappenhof der Auslese, it's very nice to pour it with cheese or with goose liver or with some pastry or desserts. I think it's very good for food pairing, the last wine.
Yeah, about the Auslese, there was a comment
Good. Yeah, I don't know.
About the Auslese, that was a comment.
Yeah.
That is outstanding complexity. It's just unbelievable. That is a great wine and surely very. About the gastronomy Paris, I think that the cheeses, the blue cheeses, goes with an Auslese. But that is because it is.
Yeah.
It is.
No, absolutely. It's also, I think it's not too expensive, so you can have it by the glass pour. No one will buy a whole bottle of Auslese. It's very important to offer it by the glass. Otherwise, it's difficult to sell sweet wines. I mean, all the sweet wines in the world have challenges to sell itself, like Sauterne or Tokaja or so. And I love sweet wines. And also, the good thing is that when you open the bottle, you can keep it at least for 2 weeks. It's not like a dry wine or like the simple Pinot Grigio. You have to drink it within 3 days. But this easy drinking, but this Auslese, you can have it 2 weeks open. And it's no problem for the quality. So it's really for the glass pour perfect. Yeah. I don't know how about the timing. Do we still have time? Then I have the German wine law for you, or you want? I don't know, Tatjana. I missed a bit that if you have 2 hours or 2 hours and a half.
Your time.
We have even 3 hours. Oh, okay, good. Okay, then I'm sorry you have to listen now to the German wine law. So we are, but you can maybe pour some more Auslese into your glass. Okay. Good. Then I will give you an introduction to the German wine law. And for me, it is important that you understand the principles of it, and that you understand where the dilemmas are and where also the challenges lay to have a wine law that is easy, understandable. Okay, let's go. Yeah, In the world, there are two classification systems existing. We have, on the one hand side, the Germanic system, which says it is important how much sugar the grapes have at harvest, and this decides what quality the wine is. Okay, sugar level at harvest is the key point here in the Germanic system. And I have to say, this came especially with the wine law of 1971. This was made after the Second World War, where the whole German wine industry was on the ground. And maybe at this time it made sense because we didn't have the obvious climate change. And it was really like that in order to have a Spätlese quality, with Riesling, you could get Spätlese only when you have super good vineyard sites, you know, the south-facing slopes and so on. So when they created the wine law, it was not so stupid as it is today, because today we have climate change. Getting sugar at harvest is not a problem because we have better canopy management, we have climate change, and we have better plant protection measures, and so on and so on. And another problem was that ridiculed this Germanic classification system was the wide planting of new crossbreeds like Bacchus, Huxelrebe, and so on, because these named grape varieties were crossbreed to be sugar factories in the vineyard. You know, when you plant Bacchus, even on the north-facing slope behind the station, you can harvest Spätlese. So the initial idea of this Germanic system was not that bad, but it ridiculed itself because of these evolutions I just told you. And another thing is what you have to consider, this this wine law, which was made in 1971, was because of it still mirrors the Second World War. It's crazy. I think I don't know if people outside of Germany understand. We are totally linked to our history. And it's really, heavy history. And you have to consider that Germany was, before the First and Second World War, one of the most expensive wines in the world. We see old wine lists where, for example, Liebfraumilch was more expensive than Chateau Palmer, or a wine from Schloss Johannisberg or Markobrunn was more expensive than Lafitte. And that's crazy. But then came so we had a totally defined wine industry. We had a big Jewish wine trade. The Jewish had the wine trade in their hands. They were also starting the Liebfraumilch, for example. And the Liebfraumilch was initially a fantastic wine. It was launched the first time in 1921 with the 1921 vintage. It was an off-dry wine, and it was promoted with the slogan, "A wine that goes with any dish." And it was the Sichel family in Mainz. They were Jewish retailers. They had also a branch in Bordeaux. When you see some old Palmer bottlings, you see Sichel on the label. Maybe you saw that already. And they had branches also in UK and even in Chile, in Hawaii, in California. And Liebfraumilch was exported all over the world and at that time it was a fantastic wine. It was not so stupid like this. I think this is also interesting to understand that, the ridiculing of German wines also started with the onset of industrial wine production. Sweet wines before the industrialization, after the Second World War, sweet wines were only sweet when they had so much sugar that the fermentation stopped naturally. After Second World War, they started with stainless steel tanks, with temperature controlled. All of a sudden was electricity in the cellars. Beforehand, there was no electricity available in the cellar. After the Second World War, they could start sterile filtration, and then it was possible to make cheap wines sweet. And this was also then where the sweet wine was broken in its image forever. It's still today that the people, when they have sweetness, they are afraid of sweetness, because sweetness in the industrialized world, it's not even with wine, it's also with food. With cheap sugar, you cover bad or no taste. You know, when you have some wine where has, you know, some stupid Hello Kitty rosé is sweet because it gives you taste where no taste is. And this is a problem because also the great sweet wines, like the Auslese that we taste, are suffering from the bad image of sweet wines because of the industrialized branch of sweetness. This is only a side story. So before the First and Second World War, we had 30,000 different single vineyard sites, also mentioned in the cadastre, which was published from the state for tax reasons. So it was always known that there are some single vineyards, they are better than the others, and the better vineyards owners had to pay more tax. After the Second World War, there was huge problems with phylloxera. So during the Second World War, there was no replanting and stuff like that. So the average yield was so low, and also it was totally damaged the wine industry. Also, a lot of vineyards were devastated by bombings. For example, the Saar and the Mosel, they were on the western wall, so on the direction towards France. And then when the Americans came, there was a huge bombings. A lot of wineries were also bombed and so on. And of course, that we killed all the Jewish people, so there was no trade anymore. So crazy. And also the image of Germany was down. No one wanted to drink German wines. And then there was the restart of the German wine business after the Second World War. It was a very hard and severe start. And then it was the time when cooperatives and big negotiants had their big time, you know, because for small growers, they had no money. They had not the possibility to market these wines. So they sold it then to the cooperatives or to the negotiants to make all that. And in this light was the wine law of 1971 made. It was in the incentives of big cooperatives and negotiants. They were not interested in little single vineyards. And this was the reason why 30,000 vineyard sites were reduced to 3,000 vineyard sites with the 1971 wine law. So they skipped 27,000 vineyard sites. They make it bigger because a big cooperative or big negotiant want to have big units. They want to make 500,000 bottles. I mean, when you have 2 hectares of a little single vineyard, it's impossible. And what the problem was is that they used famous vineyard names to name big Großlage. You know, one example is Niersteiner Pettental, you know, the Auslese that we taste, I think comes from the single vineyard. It's one of the best vineyard sites in Rheinhessen, known since century. The most expensive wine that sank with the Titanic came from that village. And then they said the new wine law, also the 600 hectares around can be called Niersteiner Gutes Domtal. And when you are a normal customer and you see Niersteiner Pettental next to a Niersteiner Gutes Domtal, it's very difficult to differentiate. The Niersteiner Gutes Domtal is the bullshit wine, the mass-produced crappy bullshit, and the Niersteiner Pettental is the good one. You know, and this is the huge problem we have with the 1971 wine law. Okay, just to give you the background information. Yeah, anyway, we have next to the Germanic system now also the Latin system, which was incorporated by the VDP, the Verband Deutscher Prädikatsweingüter. And they orient themselves towards Burgundy, you know, where you say you classify the geographic possibility. So you say when my wine, my plant grows in a Grand Cru vineyard, it should be a better quality than when it grows in a village vineyard. Yeah, here it's the difference. You see on the right-hand side, the pyramid of the VDP. I think what makes this system also very popular and famous is not only the talk about terroir. Of course, people like always, the wine growers always talk about terroir. They always blah, blah, blah terroir. But what is also a huge advantage with this system, that you have a very good mix of price points in your portfolio. Just one example, you know, the generic wine, you can make a sort of cash flow wine, you will ferment it faster, you will bottle it, you will sell it within 12 months, you get cash flow, fantastic. And it's maybe the business card of your winery. The village, you get already some terroir for the money. You can feel, yeah, Königsbach single, yeah, the Königsbach village has a more limestone in Pfalz. It's a different character as Deidesheim, where you have more sandstone. So you get already some terroir for the money. The Premier Cru, the erste Lage, is for those who can't afford the Grand Cru. And the Großes Gewächs, Grand Crus, are the ones where you get your accolades, where you can ask 60 euros. And then even when you have a wine for 60 euros on your wine list, the Erste Lage for 25 euros looks cheaper. So it helps also to sell the others, you know. It's a very clever marketing system as well. That's why it is also possible. Not only about the terroir. It's just nice. Maybe it's interesting to know. And the Germanic system, of course, with the sweet wines, with the Cabernet Spätlese, Auslese, this is then the Germanic system. With the Oechsle degrees, which has ridiculed itself, because I just told you. But anyway, we still need Cabinet, Spätlese, Auslese as predicate. And it's, when it comes to the new wine law, it's not yet known how we should use the predicate. With the VDP, they say the predicate, Cabinet, Spätlese, Auslese should not only be used for sweet wines. And yeah, we will see how this will go on. And we have big fights now in the German wine industry, because this is now the new wine law that will be first into power with the vintage 2026 in 5 years. And it says the following. So we have on the basic level, the Deutsche Wein. This is just when you get some simple Reh-Kendermann Black Tower. You know, the grapes come from all over Germany. Then it's mentioned Pinot Grigio from Germany, blah, 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 and that's it, okay. Then we have Landwein. It's a very small part of the wine, of the total wine produced is classified as Landwein, not even 2%. The Landwein regions are a bit bigger than the regions. So, you know, Mosel is a region, and there's a Landwein region which is a bit bigger than the Mosel, for example. But it's economically not really viable, 2% of the production. And then we have the origin. Starts with the region. For example, Mosel, Baden, Rheingau, whatever, you know. This is the first tip of the pyramid. And then this tip of the pyramid has itself another pyramid. So it's then divided between Mosel, region, which is the former Großlage, which I meant Niersteiner Gutes Domtal, for example. And that's a big fight, because the VDP says we don't want to have this name of the Großlage anymore because it's confusing the consumer. But the cooperatives say, but we need it because we want to sell big volumes, blah, blah, blah. So it's a constant fight. It's also, this is important to understand why this is so difficult to make a wine law in Germany, because cooperatives make 1/3 of the production. Negociants like Reh-Kendermann and so on, they make another 1/3 of the production, and you have the small wine growers. And they have all different incentives. So this makes it so difficult. But to continue, then we have the village and the single vineyard. And then the single vineyard, on top of it, is divided again in the next levels. You see single vineyard, Erstes Gewächs like Premier Cru, and on top, Großes Gewächs like Grand Cru. And now the regional boards from Mosel, Rheinhessen, and so on have to define what is Einzellage, what is erstes Gewächs, and what is großes Gewächs. They have to define the vineyards. I can tell you, good luck. I think so. This is now published, this new wine law, and so many things are not yet clear. What about the predicate and so on? And it's a big discussion and fight in the wine industry. And I think that this wine law doesn't make life easier. It's getting even more complicated. And my suggestion really is that when you buy German wine, just drink the wine, taste the wine, and buy the wine that you like and give a shit about the wine law. So that's my recommendation. So good. So this was my presentation so far. Yeah, any questions for that? No? You're done. Yeah, the wine law is always difficult to understand. Yeah, but to be honest, I hate to talk about the wine law. Very often, when you do a presentation, you have only 1 hour and a half, and then when the people start asking about the wine law, you talk 1 hour about the wine law and half an hour about the wine, and I think this is such a imbalance. But anyway. Tatjana, what do you think? How were the wines? Did you also taste the wines, Tatjana? Yes.
Very much. For example, I find this wine very nice.
Ah.
Not presented.
Okay. Good.
It's very interesting.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah, I would have loved to taste them too.
Yes.
No, fantastic. Yeah, I think it was a great. I hope you enjoyed the selection.
Yes.
Sorry, Tatjana, I interrupt you because it's. Thank you very much. Thank you, my pleasure. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it even when it was online, and yeah. I stay a little bit here so you can come and then we can chat, or you can, if you have questions, I can still answer them. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, my pleasure. Okay, so I finished, or so then Tatjana, we see us at 7 o'clock. We see us at 7 o'clock. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Bye-bye.
Я просто хочу разыграть. Знаете, что, во-первых, я хочу поблагодарить Марину за то, у нас есть прекрасная, не только мир Riesling Weeks, который начнется через пару дней, 1 июля в Ростове празднуем. Но я хотела бы разыграть книгу, потому что Роман большой специалист по биодинамике. Это серьезная работа. На протяжении года у нас фотографов посетило 12 виноделин в Альте-Адидже, в Австрии, в Франции и в Германии. Всего 12 историй, 12 хозяйств. Очень подробная работа, научная, с большим трудом сделана, в общем, как говорится. А вопрос идет такой: кто ответит первым, тот получит книгу и мерчи. Руку, какой российский ученый, почвовед оказал влияние на биодинамическое движение во всем мире. И трудами которого Романа, например, очень активно пользовалась, когда писала эту
Какие группы?
Одна фамилия в почвоведении.
Так,
Имеет ли какое-то отношение к почвоведению, но почему-то мне подсказывает фамилию Докучаев. Он 19 век.
оказалось влияние на Riesling Weeks. Там учится, в общем-то, вот Гильденхайм тоже.
Thanks a lot. Да, конечно, можно читать. Что-то там Шпрехер, Дойч, часто
Ну, книга будет в скором времени переведена на английский язык. Вот, и я вам немножко помощь переведу.
Вечером я еще раз.